Hey everyone, we're here at the Warwick Bass Camp 2016, here with Kern Brantley. Thank you so much for coming over, man.
Thank you for inviting me.
Great to see you.
This is awesome.
We're just going to have a quick catch-up to find out a bit about what you've been up to lately.
Yeah.
So what's been keeping you busy back home in Detroit?
Oh, well, man. Well, at home I'm working on an event which is called Detroit Bass Day. And it's an event where all the bass players from Detroit come together once a year and we fellowship and exchange notes and gear and just have a big, massive party and jam session.
Okay.
A lot of good guys from Detroit.
Right, I mean, Ralph's here. So
Yeah, Ralph Armstrong.
sure, and that's how you got involved with Warwick, right, through Ralph? Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh yeah, well, I bought my first Warwick bass in Detroit at this place called Hubert and Breeze.
Okay.
Which is the only store in Detroit that carries Warwick products. So, you know, I seen my first Warwick bass, which was a thumb bass, 5-string. And what I really liked about the 5-string Warwick bass is that the low B is very solid. It isn't flat, it's not really flat, but it's a solid tone. And that's what really impressed me about that bass as far as the tone of the bass and the wood and the body design. It was kind of curvy, and so it kind of fit my hand and fit my body design really well. So that was my first Warwick bass. And then meeting Ralph, you know, just playing around Detroit, all the jazz clubs, Baker's Lounge, Ralph Armstrong. And he was also a Warwick player, so that's how I kind of hooked up with Hans and was able to get together with the company. It was great.
What are your impressions of being here for the first time in Germany?
Wow, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Great place. Everybody's really nice, and the Warwick factory is amazing. I'm just having a ball here. Yeah, man, I love it.
And how important is that fifth string? You were saying earlier on how you play a lot of key bass now as well.
Yeah, I play a lot of synth bass, so a lot of the notes in some of these songs are lower. You're getting stuff lower than the E, like the low D and the low C. So with the Warwick bass, I'm able to hit those notes and have a real solid note without flabby, without, you know, just real solid and strong, you know. So I really love the B string on the Warwick basses. To me, each Warwick bass has its own sound too. Every Warwick bass I play, they all have their own different voice. You know, they all have different voices, so I like it a lot. Really versatile instrument.
And which models do you play right now?
Oh, I use the Vampire, and then also have the thumb bass, which was my very first bass. And then I recently acquired a Warwick Infinity.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful, beautiful instrument as well. Yeah, I love that one as well. But the thumb bass is still my go-to bass. I've just been stuck on that for years.
Can you tell us about some of the artists that you've been working with recently?
Well, yes. The last tour I did was Lady Gaga Artpop tour. And I've been touring with her for the past 6 years. So I did the Monster Ball tour, my first tour. And then I did the Born This Way Ball, which lasted 2 more years, and now the Artpop tour. And then prior to that, I was working with Beyonce and Destiny Child, and they both toured Destiny Child and Beyonce solo tour. Then prior to that, I was with Mary J. Blige as her musical director for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you describe that period as a musical director?
Oh man, it was
Mary?
great. It was an exciting time. I was in New York a lot because Mary from New York, and also I was working with Bad Boy Records, Puff Daddy. I recently recorded his new album. I also used my Warwick bass on a couple tunes on Puff Daddy's new record.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, the thumb bass, and it was a great session. And New York was exciting during that period. You know, there's a lot going on there in New York, and it was a really blessing for me to be in New York at that time.
What were the main challenges having to step up to musical director as opposed to just being the bass player?
Well, as an MD, you have to know everybody's part. And I'm kind of like the middleman between the management and the musicians, so I have to kind of help even negotiate some salaries for some of the guys, and I have to deal directly with the artists. So this challenge is dealing directly with the artists. If anything goes wrong, they're going to come to you first before they go to the band. And so they come to you, and hopefully you can get everything fixed and rectified right there before it has to go any further to the band members. So I'm kind of like the middleman. And it's also was challenging too, because I had to actually help her find background singers on the Mary J. Blige tour. So I had to deal with the singers, I deal with the choreographer as far as working on choreography, with the dancers and knowing accents and certain moves, and then with Mary sitting down, coming up with all the arrangements for the show.
Do you find the bass is a good point to lead the band as well in that situation?
Well, yeah, kind of, because with the bass you can still play your part and have your ears open to hear other things, where if I was a keyboard player or a guitarist, you're focusing on rhythm and chords, but with the bass you can kind of, like my uncle was Nate Watts from Stevie Wonder, and he was the musical director from Stevie, so that's what really inspired me to be a musical director, because just watching him and all the years with Stevie Wonder and seeing the great job he did. So yeah, I really wanted me to be a musical director. My brother Valdez is also a musical director with Usher.
Wow.
And he's a keyboardist, but he plays keyboards on the bass. He plays the bass parts on his keyboard. So he's like the bass player / keyboard player.
So you have a very musical family.
Yeah, yeah.
If we just rewind a bit, can you tell us about how you first began to play the bass and why the bass? Why did you choose this instrument?
Actually, I was forced into playing the bass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my oldest brother played guitar, and I was also a guitar player, but he always took all the solos, and he wanted to be the main guy. So one day we were taking some music lessons, so I was always gravitate to playing the low parts, and then he would play all the solos and the chords. So my music teacher said, well, you're going to play bass because you're playing all the low parts. So then I switched to the bass at that point. So I really actually started as a guitar player first.
And what happened in between that period and leading up to getting the gig with Mary J. Blige?
Oh man, well, in Detroit, there's a lot of church there. So I was playing in church, I was doing a lot of gospel stuff, and I was working with a guy, Thomas Whitfield, and he was a musical genius. So having to work with him in the studio, he introduced me to the Winans family. Then I became playing bass for them, and then I became their musical director for the Winans, and then also that led to the Clarksons. So I started first in church, and then that led, after high school, I had an audition for Earl Klugh, who's a jazz guitarist from Detroit. And Earl was my first major tour, traveling to Japan and to Europe. And that was a great experience. So I always figure if you could play gospel music and if you could play jazz music, then everything else is kind of easy after that. And I also went to college for 2 years, the Henry Ford College in Dearborn, Michigan. And I studied jazz and classical piano at that school.
And what would you say to guys who are looking for a gig like that don't necessarily have Mary J. Blige on their CV yet? What would be your advice to players like that?
Just to listen to good music and try to be as versatile as possible, and listen to good music. And like nowadays, you can go on the internet to like YouTube and stuff, and you can hear and see guys. Back then, we had to literally go to concerts to hear, people like Bootsy Collins. Oh, that's another thing. Bootsy Collins was a big influence on my playing, because in Detroit, the P-Funk Lab United Sound Studio is located in Detroit. So me and some of my friends, we used to go there and hang out to see if we could meet Bootsy and George Clinton. So one day we actually got the chance to meet Bootsy, and they let us come into the studio and hang out.
Oh, wow.
So it was really great. In Detroit, I had a chance to be around so many amazing musicians growing up as a kid. I was even studying with one of the Funk Brothers, Earl Van Dyke, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, that was amazing. Getting a chance to sit down and talk to Mr. Van Dyke, and after seeing all the credits, he was playing on all the records back then, and you know, he was an instructor as well at a music school, and I got a chance to study with him briefly for like a year or so, and that was amazing, meeting him and hearing stories about James Jamerson and those guys that all did the Motown sessions. So growing up there, it was a blessing to be. I go visit Motown all the time. I know some of the other guys from Motown. It was awesome.
It still has a great legacy there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
And how about the Lady Gaga tour? Can you tell me about that? Because she's been making waves recently.
Yeah, she's recently recorded with Tony Bennett, and they did, you know, the jazz tour and everything. But prior to that, she's an amazing person to work with. We traveled all over the world, and that for me was just really amazing to see different countries and explore different cultures and different foods. And I actually have a lot of friends now all over the world, a lot of Japanese friends, and as we were talking earlier, I have a lot of friends in Ireland, of all places, and that was a really great place. So I really loved working with her because the versatility. She's an amazing musician and songwriter, so I learned a lot working there as well.
What would you say is the hardest thing about being on the road for that long? And how do you keep things fresh?
Oh, wow. Well, the hardest thing is kind of, you know, you always want to go home. After about 3 or 4 months, you kind of like feel tired and you want to go home. But after a month at home, you're ready to get out of there and get back on the road. So I guess the hardest part is just the traveling. The show is the easiest part. The actual music is the easy part. The hardest part is the traveling. Like sometimes we would go to Australia, that's like a 22-hour flight, or to Africa, which is like 18 hours flights. So that's the hardest part to me, was the actual travel part. And getting up early, 6 o'clock lobby calls to be at the airport, and, you know, driving all night.
And how about the performance itself, the show?
Oh.
How do you keep that ticking over and still feeling, you know, motivated to go out again?
Oh yeah, well the audience gives you such a rush when you're out there, and you get so motivated by seeing the crowd and the fans. And each venue is different, and you know, going to different countries, you know, even some people that can't speak English, but they know all the words to the song. So you kind of get into it, and if they see you having fun, then they begin to have fun as well.
What would you say is tricky about playing that size venue? I mean, a stadium brings with it a whole new set of rules, right? Compared to a little club or something like that.
Yeah.
Have you had to tailor your playing in any particular way?
Yeah, you have to play more solid and less notes, because in those big arenas, if you play a lot of notes, it starts to sound like a cluster out in the audience. So when you're playing big, I learned from playing stadiums to play big and solid, and not so many notes and not so much fast stuff, because it don't translate well in the audience. So I just kind of play really solid, really big sounding notes. And I always tell people, just play the pocket. Don't try to do too much, because in those big rooms, it doesn't translate very well in the audience.
And I guess the noise is bouncing around all over the place,
Yeah, a lot
right?
of slap back, you can hear a drum delay out in the house. So you have to really focus. We use in-ear monitors, so we're hearing ourselves, but you have to really focus on what's going on, because it can get away from you if you're not focusing on that one and that downbeat. You have to stay on that.
And is there a performance aspect as well to that sort of show?
Oh yeah, everything is over-exaggerated. So a movement or whatever you do, you have to really over-exaggerate it and make it bigger than it actually is, because there's, you know, people sitting. You know, I think the biggest crowd we played was 100,000 people.
Wow.
Over in England.
Yeah.
And we played another soccer stadium in South Africa. So in places like that, you have to play big and you have to perform over-exaggerated. Yeah, so that's...
And how much preparation goes into a tour like that? When do you start rehearsals?
Oh, wow. Man, normally I say it takes about a good 3 months of preparation, but sometimes we have to fast track it and have maybe a month to put everything together. But I think they start pre-production about 3 or 4 months prior just to get the programming and get all the sounds and equipment and everything right.
And is that just the band, or is that, what point do you go in with the artists
We
and the
start
crew?
with just the band first, and then they start adding the singers, then we add the artists, and then the choreographer comes in with the dancers, and then after that we go into a production rehearsal, which actually rehearsing on stage with all the props and the lights, and if there are any special effects or pyro techniques or anything like that, we get to rehearse with that prior to the show. So, and that's the last phase of it, which is the production rehearsal.
And have there been any instances where you've really had to think on your feet, where something's gone wrong, or you've had to react in a certain way?
Yeah, all the time, because there's trap doors.
Right.
There's sometimes where the floor may move, or there may be things ahead, over your head, that, like lights or props that are moving. So you have to always be aware of your surroundings. And then on most major tours, they have a piece of white tape that's going around the entire stage to know that if you go over that tape, there may be a drop there or something. So you have to be aware of the parameters of the stage and know how far you can go. You could fall off the stage. It's a lot of things that could happen. I've actually seen guys fall off the stage. I've seen guys fall into pits. I've seen people get burnt by pyro if they were too close to it. So you have to really be aware of your surroundings when you're on a tour that has that kind of production.
And what relationship do you have with the sound guys? I mean, they must be your best friends, right?
Yeah, they are our best friends. They are our best friends, and you have to really know how to communicate with them. And there's a mutual respect, and they don't really have time, so you have to know what you want, you know, because they have other people to deal with as well. So when they come to you and say, what do you need in your ears, or do you need more drums, or do you need more vocals, or do you need certain elements in your ears, so you got to make sure that you communicate. So that's the most thing, is communication with the sound people.
And what's coming up next after the Detroit bass show?
After Detroit bass show, actually I've been invited to the Detroit Historical Museum is doing an exhibit on the sidemen, the musicians that back up artists in Detroit and around the world. So I was selected as one of the musicians that will be in the exhibit at the Detroit Historical Museum. So I'm excited about that. And then me and my brother are in the studio working on a solo project. As me and him going to do a collaboration record together.
Sounds great. Looking forward to checking that out.
It should be fun.
Thanks again, Kent.
No, thank you.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you again back here soon for some more chat on the sofa. Thanks.